Hey guys, what's up? This is a part two on some opening advice for players that are busy and have jobs and school, etc. And I'll get to the chase real quickly. Some players messaged me and said, "What? Hey, what about the London system? That's a good system to learn. But basically, there's a many openings. I mean, you could try. You could play B4. If you're white. Um, G, you can play the Grobs, whatever. Okay, the main point, the main point that where you're trying to get to, um, and the fact, seeing that you have limited time to study, is you're basically trying to implement the same structure, um, regardless of what the response is by the opponent. So, for instance, let's bring up the London, for example. After D4, let's just bring the bishop right out. Knight f6. Let's just get to a structure. E3, C6, C3. The point is that, and this is what a lot of players, amateur players, like about the London system, is that no matter what black plays, white always gets this structure, this Slav or semi-Slav Moran reversed type structure. Okay, and this allows you to master the middle game principles based off of this structure. All right, and so that's basically what you're trying to do, no matter what system that you decide to pick. Remember, the college system is just like the London system, has the same structure, except that the college system, this bishop would be back here on C1 or on B2, but the principles are still the same because of the structure. Remember, Philidor said a long time ago that the pawns were the soul of chess. What does that mean? That means that the pawn structure dictates the location, the optimal location of the pieces. So, for instance, in this pawn structure, this bishop definitely is better placed outside of the pawn chain where it can participate in the fight. Where does this bishop go? If you look for a square, it would be right here, right? Either here or here, right? But this, touches the opponent's king side. So pawns are the soul of chess. It's easy to dictate where the knight goes. Here and here, eventually. And this is why this knight usually goes here, here if you can. Bishop ends up there, castle, because it's all based on the pawn structure. So that's the basic point. So it doesn't matter if you play London system, college system, um, King's Indian attack. Is the idea is to play a system that, regardless of what black's response is, you can still play the same general middle game plan. Okay. Now, with that said, your next step is to then study that middle game plan. Study the typical plans that will arise based on black's unique responses. So if black plays say you're playing again this London system, if black plays a King's Indian setup, for instance, right, Fian kills instead of playing the move D5. So let's say D4 is played, Knight F6, and you still want to play the London system. And G6. Well, what are the typical, again, you're going to go to your same structure. Let's play D6 here. I'm sorry. Let's play here, here, and let's set up our same thing. Now, of course, I'm playing hastily because you want to, I know in the London system, one of the things is you want to try to preserve this bishop from getting clipped off. And let's just play typical King's Indian move D6, right? C3, and now let's castle. Again, we're not claiming any theoretical advantage for white here. The idea though is against a slightly different setup from black. There's going to be some nuanced responses here from white, but generally we can say that the pawn structure for white is still the same, and therefore the piece location, the optimal piece location, is still generally going to be the same. right? So yeah, what you want to do is you get that similar structure, and then you study the middle games coming out of that structure. You master those, okay? And what's great is since you don't have that much preparation, you can concentrate on those aspects of the game because you know you're going to get into the similar middle games because the pawn structure is going to be similar, right? The only difference is that black is going to have some slightly different piece positions because of his setup. So black say feels comfortable on King's Indian, so he picks this setup. If black is a say Queen's Gambit decline play, he's gonna put his pawn on D5, right? Notice now here, if we look at optimal piece placement here, the bishop is optimally placed, the dark square bishop that is. This bishop now, before we said that D3 or E2 was the best spot, but now with this pawn here, blunting the bishop on D3, we can't say that this is the best place for the bishop, right? It's not clear. Perhaps right now, E2 is the best, you see? Or C4 because the pawn is not here. These are options to think about. Perhaps getting the bishop to B3, you see? Or E2. Again, it's not absolutely clear. But the point of me showing you that is that, yes, there's going to be some minor changes. For example, like notice how I threw this move H3 in there to preserve this bishop, right, from being snatched off. So those are little minor nuances that you will have to consider. But again, that's a lot less preparation than, if you were, say, studying the Queen's Gambit, for example, and having to study all the different type of responses from black. Okay. Okay. Another example, for instance, what I like is I'm sorry, I meant to is English. So now there's many different English variations, but however, say if you again you don't have time to prepare, you could play the same setup. Knight f6, right, is representative of a typical Indian defense player that would like to transpose into King's Indian or something. You let him do what he's gonna do, right? But say this is your structure that you want to study as white, right? It's like a reverse dragon setup. You can play that setup regardless if white plays c5 or excuse me if black plays c5 or if he responds e5, right? Same plans. Okay, so notice where the pawn is, black pawn. Let's switch over again, e5. Same setup. Now you can see what I'm saying. Okay, the preparation in the opening has practically been eliminated. Okay, so what you do is you take your small amount of time that you might have, whether it's a half an hour, 20 minutes, and when you study middle games, you know that you can rely on getting this structure for white, and you study the structure, and you study the typical middle game continuations when black responds with e5 or c5. Notice the difference here is that with this bishop on c5 instead of a pawn, that this makes white's job a little easier expanding on the queen side. You see? So just little nuances like that, right, are not that big of a deal compared to studying, all these different, setups. Or for example, setups where where white would play the move e3, for example, right? Play the English like that. You see, these are structural decisions, okay? So if you like this structure, right, then you will play like that. But don't just try. You're trying to avoid as much preparation. Not of your opponent, but the amount of preparation you have to do. So it's important to recognize what type of structures you want to go into and that you're gonna feel comfortable with. Okay, and gearing your openings toward that. Let's just look at the black side real quick. Black um has an advantage in the opening in that what he's getting from White, of course, White has the first move, right? He gets to swing first, so to speak. But what I like to consider as an advantage for Black is getting information. And so when White plays a D4, Black has information, right? He knows, okay, these are the options White has to set up his pieces. Okay, so yes, White has the first move, but now Black has something to look at and can formulate his strategy. Okay, now here you can play a lot of things to avoid preparation for Black, and it's just up to you to find what exactly what it is that what kind of structures you like. Now, if you really want to avoid a lot of preparation, I mean, you play moves like G6, B6, Knight C6, things like that, even E6, D6, just to um because the thing is, it's like this. If you want to try to play in the center and be aggressive, right, and be one step behind grabbing initiative, there's gonna be a price to pay. It's gonna take more study, more preparation. So the price that you're paying for avoiding the preparation a lot of times, is giving up that right. So if you don't mind giving up space, then you can play these moves G6, B6, and just avoid E6, D6, and avoid preparation. Because once you play, say E6 for example, you're saying, okay, I'm willing to give my opponent space or whatever. Okay, but let's say if you don't mind this structure right here, let's say E4, and let's go here. Right, notice this structure is the same structure as a Queen's Gambit decline structure. Right, it's black. Forget about the advanced e pawn. The structure is still the same. Right, so say c4. Say White's a Queen's Gambit player. He doesn't want to go into the French. And you can still play the same thing. Right, knight c3, and then you can go into like this Queen's Gambit declined, or even if you're bold, you can go into this Tarish. The point is, though, is just to point out the similarity of the structures, keeping the structure the same. All right. So the first step is find out what structure you want to play, and then you do all you can do to make sure you get that structure. That's how you leave you let the opening phase go. And again, I've seen this from international masters. I mean, they'll play openings that are quote unquote not the best openings. For instance, Alpine Sicilian. Because what it is about at the end of the day is about familiarity and comfort. You make sure that you can get there to that particular position that you're familiar with, every time. Okay, and then you will see your results improve, and then you master that position. You master the middle game and the ending. You don't worry about the opening. You can blitz out the opening. Now you're not sitting there at the move two, wondering like what's going on. You know, like how many times have you been playing or whatever, and like say you like the Dutch, right? You have fun, and you've been studying the Leningrad, right? You've been studying good old Leningrad, right? Let's see if I can remember. Yes, this looks pretty good. I say you've been studying this variation. Let's go C6, D5. Let's say you've been studying good old Leningrad, right? You got this down packed, right? You feeling good. You can play it blindfold now. You know what I mean? So now you sit down at the board. So let's make up a rating. Say in this position you're a master, 2200. In other words, like you play anybody below 2200, you're getting an easy draw, or you're winning. Like you feel no qualms about this position. Great. Now you sit down, D4. You tried out your F5. bang, somebody hit you with something crazy like that. Okay, now there's a famous game too, the Alacon with the black pieces playing against this. And he showed basically how to deal with this. But again, so now you're not you feeling some funny about it now because you haven't studied this. Okay, so now your rating in this particular position, now you're like a 1500 player. Cause now what are you doing? Instead of blitzing out your moves, now you're sitting there at the clock. Say it's game 30 or something, short time control. Now you're sitting there, right? You know the move is suspect because your general principles are telling you, okay, you shouldn't move the queen early in the opening. This can't be right, this and that. But guess what's happening? The time is ticking off the clock, right? So now instead of feeling comfortable, now you got reinventing the wheel. Now you're in your mind trying to figure out, you know, like, okay, what's the best response here? Okay? And then, so let's say you try to, you play your general moves, knight f6, you know, next thing you know, you're hanging a pawn. You see? Just like that. So now you're like, man, what do you want to play the Leningrad. So you say, okay, play g6. Right? The opponent is feeling all, all chipper. He just whips out, knight c3. And then, you're like, man, I want to get to this, I want to get to this Leningrad. You're trying to get to that structure. D6. And let's just say like your opponent decides to bust open the center. Right? Let's say you throw the bishop in there. Right? Bishop d7. And a 3. And let's just say let's say you do that, right? Knight f6. Like you're trying to get to, you want to play Leningrad, so you're trying to get there. Now you play normal looking moves, so now you play that. And knight f6. What do you want to take with the bishop or the pawn? Right? Let's take with the pawn, right? Since the pawn is backward, let's take with the pawn. Right? Let's say bishop f4. Castle. I try to play respectable moves for black, not make it too bad, And let's play like I don't know. Play rook e8. Okay, right? So and then let's start the king side attack. So right here, white white has, little advantage here, I would say. He had a little more space. His attack on the king side started. And it's gonna be one of them double-edged games. Black has yet to get his counterplay started on the queen side, and I would give the nod, to white here. I would rather play white in this position. The point that I'm trying to make is that you you know you would wind up wasting a lot of time, you know, thinking about what the opponent's doing instead of just being able to get right to your structure. And notice that even in this example, I tried to get to that structure. Try to keep the Leningrad, structure alive, even though I can't get my pawn to f5 right away. See, like here, if I try to force it, right? Okay, I want to play Leningrad, right, and to get this structure, the position gets very dangerous, right? Queen b3, right? That's an example. Queen b3 check, h5, right? Because by pushing this pawn, I've gotten rid of the option to play bishop f5, and even though the position looks like, a typical Leningrad, it's very dangerous for white after for black, So, so you got to be very, very, careful and your choices, So again, choose an opening where you can basically get to to your structure. You don't want nothing to really stop you, um, from getting there. And that's why, like, if you're a real busy player, I recommend, you know, moves like B6, E6, D6, etc. All right. So any questions, just comment in the box below, and like difficulties you have. But that's my advice in a nutshell. Is get a simple system, study the middle game structure of that system, and make sure you always get to that structure, master that, and master the end game.